This is a 2020 Kona in 2025, so it's 5 years old. How has it held up? How good has it been? So far, this car's been great. The outside's been perfectly fine. We haven't had any damage, any wrecks, anything really crazy. It's just lived a pretty good normal life. It's been a daily driver. The van doesn't really get driven anymore. I do like the car. This is an ultimate trim, so it has the nicer wheels, which in my opinion are not great because they do scratch easily. Now thankfully I have not had any wheels get curb rash, but I have had them get scratched actually. Whenever I took it in for a tire rotation, they ended up scratching the edge of some of the rims, which is unfortunate. But other than that, they look perfectly fine. Suspension-wise, the vehicle has been perfectly fine. I don't hear any rattles creaking in the suspension. There is some rattles, and I'll talk about those. But I don't hear anything bad with the suspension. All the doors open and close just fine. The seats have held up. I got a little pillow for lumbar support, and a little fridge for some waters. I have taken the headrests off the back seats here because we pretty much never have backseat passengers. So there's no really reason to keep them on because now I can see out of the back window a lot better. And these are the headrests that go on the back seats. I've actually put them on the front seats because in my opinion, this headrest is a lot more comfortable than the actual front seat headrests. So yeah, this is pretty much the back. There's nothing much to it. It's very basic, very boring. You get a light. You get no charging, no USB ports, no 12-volt outlet back here, which I really hate. I really wish you did. I can't even sit in here with the seat all the way back, and how I drive, I could not even fit behind myself. There is no leg room in the back of one of these cars. For kids, it would be fine. There's just no room back here. But if you are a single or a couple who don't have kids, aren't planning on having kids, and you don't need to transport people in the back seat, there's really no reason to have this giant car with a giant back seat. You can fold them down very easily, and with the headrests off, they fold down just fine. I don't have to move the seat forward. If the headrests were on, obviously I'd have to move this seat forward or take them off and then fold it down. But by keeping them off, this makes it very easy to fold, and that one folds down too. You get a lot more space back here. This can hold some weight, but you can't really put anything on it because the glass doesn't open. So it's really just a privacy cover. It does hinder your cargo carrying capacity, but if you get these thick bags off Amazon, then you can easily slide groceries in and out of here. It's so far been a perfectly versatile car, but it's pretty much all cars have seats that fold down, so there's really nothing special about that. There's no heated seats on the back, which I don't really understand why this car doesn't have heated rear seats, because I want to say some of the electric Konas did. But other than that, plastics held up fine, door handles and have held up fine. The vehicle does not get absolutely filthy in here, which I like, because no one wants to get in a car and have their clothing rub up against the metal and then they get a bunch of dirt. There is definitely some, and keep in mind, this car has not been washed in several months. And it still looks decently clean, but there's definitely some dirt on it. But some cars are really bad about getting really dirty here, and you can easily get that dirt on your clothes if you're getting in and out of the back seats. Thankfully, this car is engineered to where it doesn't do that. So I really like the rubber protectors that they put on the ends of the door to keep you from scratching up the side of the door. I just really don't like the fact that they are painted black on a white car. It'd be nice if it was color matched. Yeah, white rubber would probably yellow out pretty bad, but the reality is it just doesn't look that great. It's got the button, which is nice for locking and unlocking, which if I try to lock it right now, you can hear it beeping at me, and that is because the car is on. You cannot lock the car whenever it is on. If you go to try to lock it, it electronically opens all the locks, which is really frustrating. All right, so from inside the car, everything is held up perfectly fine. You can see my phone is on the wireless charging pad, and well, okay, now it's charging. That was a little weird why I just stopped charging for a bit. I have noticed this wireless charging pad doesn't work that well. It does not charge very fast, and on top of that, it gets your phone pretty warm. It claimed in the advertising to keep the phone cool, but it doesn't. It gets that phone pretty warm. It still works though, and if you turn off the car and you go to get out of the car, it will let you know on the gauge cluster that, hey, you have a device in the charging pad. And that has saved me from leaving my device in here. I'm not sure why I'm calling this a device, it's just a phone. But yeah, I really wish the charging pad would be a faster charging pad with a cooling fan in it. On top of that, if you have a big phone, like this is a Sony Xperia. This is the second generation Sony Xperia. And this phone is a 21:9 aspect ratio. So it's a pretty tall phone, but it's also pretty thin. So there's plenty of room as far as the width of the phone goes. The length of the phone just barely fits. I don't know if you see that, but it is just barely fitting in there. If you have a large phone like an S24 Ultra or a Google Pixel Pro, the XL model will fit with a regular case, but if it's like a Pixel 7 or Pixel 8 and it's got a big plastic case on it, you can't even fit the phone in this little charging pad that they have here. It's just not big enough, unfortunately, and I really do wish that they made this area to charge your phone bigger. I also wish that they made it where the cord can still be out and you can shut this, because I can't shut it with a cord, and you could be asking, well, just unplug it and now you can close it. Well, how am I going to get Android Auto to work whenever it's not wireless? This car does not have wireless Android Auto, does not have wireless Apple CarPlay, which is really frustrating. So you have to plug in your phone every single time you want to use Android Auto. And the Android Auto in this car can be a little gimmicky, and it's not an Android Auto thing. Apple CarPlay is the same way. It is just the way a lot of cars' infotainment centers are now. They are just having problems. It seems like it affects some brands more than other though. And I have found that there will be times where we will go to use Android Auto and it just doesn't want to work. And the only way to try to get it working is to turn off the car, step out of the car, close the door, lock it, unlock it, go back in the car, turn it back on again, and it kind of like does a reboot on the computer. And sometimes that works. Now I have the energy information pulled up here because I wanted to share one of the most interesting things about this EV, and that is its range calculation. So you can see that at full charge, it estimates that I'm going to get 246 miles of range. Now what it used to do is provide me a range estimate that was very much inaccurate. It would always estimate I could get about 270 to 280 miles of range, even when my efficiency was something pretty normal, which 3.6 miles per kilowatt, that's not that bad considering it's winter time and it has been very cold here recently, and I reset the accumulated info every single time I charge the car so I can see how many miles I've driven since the car was at 100%. Now some of you are going to go, wait a minute, you charge your car to 100% like all the time? Yes, actually I do. Now it doesn't get plugged in all the time. It is at 78% battery, and the last time this car was plugged in to charge was probably a week ago. Generally, this car only gets charged once every couple of days. We do not plug this thing in daily. There's no need to plug it in daily. We're not driving 200 miles in one day. It's going to take us days and days and days before we finally drive the battery down to 50%. And then we'll just plug it in when it's at 50. The battery on this car is held up perfectly fine. We're still getting the exact same range that we got when we first got this EV back in 2024. So range-wise, it's a 5-year-old battery now. It's been perfectly fine. Haven't had any issues with the range. All the lights still work, all the buttons still work. Nothing has gotten tremendously worn out. Like the steering wheel material still feels nice. It is starting to get just a little bit more shiny than what it was. I can always dull the shine down with just some watered down rubbing alcohol, and you can wipe it on the steering wheel and it'll kind of dry out the leather. The stitching on it, nothing is super sharp. Some steering wheels have very sharp stitching, which I really hate. Nothing is sharp. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a twist. You can see that the material kind of twists a little bit, and it definitely shows. That's a little quality issue that I've seen on a lot of cars, though, not just Hyundais, and I really wish they would get that down a little better. Now, as far as the door panels go, again, nothing appears to be getting very worn out. You can see a little bit of discoloration in the materials, which is kind of understandable considering a lot of the clothes I wear are dark, and I also wear a lot of blues, and I guess that is rubbing onto the light gray material. Unfortunately, that means it's just going to look worse as time goes on, but I love the interior color of this car. I don't know if the camera really does it justice. I don't really think it does, because looking at it, it looks a little bit more of a rich blue, and the camera is kind of graying everything out just a little bit. Now, I don't want to necessarily give you guys a review of the car. There's plenty of reviews online of this vehicle and how well it handles and how well it drives. I really just want to talk about some of the good things and the bad things. So to start off with the good thing, I like the fact that the vehicle now gives me a very accurate range estimation. It's saying that I will get about 246 miles on a full charge, and that is actually a very realistic number. This vehicle, like I said, used to give me a pretty absurd estimate of its range. It was always overestimating how much range it could actually get. And then one day it just stopped doing that. And it has always now given a very accurate range. I do not know if Hyundai updated something over the air. I don't even know if this car can get over the air updates. But somehow it figured out that its range wasn't being accurately predicted, and it corrected that issue, and now it gets a great range estimate. I don't even know what happened. I didn't adjust any setting. My driving style didn't change. My average miles per kilowatt have not changed at all. So I have absolutely no idea why it is now giving me a very accurate range estimate. I'm guessing the computer inside the car has just learned the battery better and learned how it uses energy, and now can just more accurately predict the range. But I don't know why it couldn't have done that before. Why did it wait until 5 years in to start giving a very accurate range estimate? So I don't know what happened there. It's very interesting though. Now, a bad thing about this car, something that I really dislike, is this B-pillar here has a rattle in it. The passenger side has one too. It's not the seat belt. It has nothing to do with this. From what it sounds like it is something inside the pillar, and it just sounds like it kind of just knocks back and forth a little bit, only when you go over certain bumps. And I know there's an airbag in this pillar. I don't know if it's something related to that. It could just be like a wire just knocking on something. It's not loud, it's not really metallic, but something in there is rattling, and you hear it sometimes quite often, and then other times you just don't. It's annoying. I wish that it wasn't there, but I'm too afraid to get it fixed, because I think if I take it to Hyundai and they actually take the plastic paneling apart, they might end up producing more rattles after it all goes back together, because a lot of this paneling is really not meant to be taken apart. I mean, it can be taken apart, but there's a big risk that you'll just get other rattles down the road, because once this paneling is all clipped into place, it's basically just wants to stay there for the rest of its life. Now, another thing that I don't particularly like is the drive mode selectors. Yes, pardon the white Crocs. So This doesn't make sense to me. Why is there this bulge here? What does this black piece do? I get the buttons, the placement of the buttons, the drive, reverse, and then park and neutral, and that little pattern they decided to use is a little bit odd. It would have been nice if the buttons were either linear, kind of how you would expect it, park, reverse, neutral, and drive, or maybe they go from left to right. But it's a little bit odd, but it's not terrible. You know, I can keep my hand here and just drive, reverse, neutral, park. I don't really mind. I just don't understand what this is for. Like, just move the parking brake button up and make like another cubby hole here. Or maybe a phone holder, something, I don't know. There's a little bit of a space in here. There's some space in the glove box, not a lot though. You really can't put much here. I mean, you can put a key in there, but this is a very small space. I do like how there is a cutout in the cup holders, because you can just kind of take your phone and throw it there. You know, if you're just gonna drive for a short trip and you don't feel like putting the phone on the charging pad. Unfortunately though, there's no soft foam materials or anything in here, so your phone's just gonna knock around on the screen, but it's not really a huge issue. This is all soft plastic. But the cup holders, perfectly fine, normal size. They're deep enough where they can actually hold on to stuff. So I don't really have any issues with them. The glove box compartment, nothing crazy about it, apart from the fact that it's actually easy to take off, which is surprising. If you look right there at that little piece, you just twist that and pop it off, and there's one on the other side, and boom, this compartment comes down. You can replace your cabin air filter super fast, super easy, well engineered in my opinion. I like when glove boxes are easy to remove. Some of them are a pain to remove, and it's pretty difficult to replace your cabin air filter. Now, one thing I don't like about some of the materials in this car is that they do scratch easily. Like this plastic material here, it's hard, and you can't really see it on the camera, but, well, I guess you kind of can, but there's a decent scratch right here, and there's like a scrape up here. Really wish that wasn't the case, but oh well. I wish the buttons were not blue, because blue is just not very easy to see in the dark. It's hard to make out what the symbol is, especially at nighttime. And I really wish that car manufacturer would stop using blue LEDs in the interior of a car. Sure, some people might like that, but I just really don't care to have blue LEDs in the car. But that's just a little gripe of mine, not really a huge issue. As I said before, no outlet in the rear seat or on the back of the center console, which really sucks because I like having my little refrigerator back here where you can put waters in there and they stay nice and cool. We actually leave this thing turned on all the time. Right now I have it off just to reduce interior noise, but leaving this 50-watt refrigerator on does not hurt the vehicle's range. The main thing that's going to affect range is climate, which right now I have the heat turned all the way up. It maxes out at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't really understand why it does that. Why can't it just say high? Why does it have to say 82? Because frankly, I don't want it to just go to 62 and then 82. Like, I just want to have it use as much power as it can to make as hot of air as possible whenever I need it. Instead, what the climate system does is it basically takes the vehicle up to 82 degrees and just keeps it there. And that is really annoying, because if I just want like 2 degrees down and I turn it to 80, well, then it's going to try to make the interior 80. So if it is 82 degrees in here, if I have the AC turned on, then it'll actually start blowing cold air through the vents to bring the temperature down. It's like, I don't want cold air, I just want a little bit less warm air. And it doesn't seem like it's blowing 80-degree air out of the vents now. It seems like it's trying to make the cabin 80 degrees as if auto was turned on. And I do not like that. I do not ever use automatic climate. I find it super frustrating. It never works as well as I'd want it to. I just want to be able to control it. If I just want air to be a little bit less warm or a little bit more warm. Just want to move this 1 or 2 notches and just have it blow out the air temperature that I want it to. That's not a deal breaker. That's just one of the little annoyances that I have found. Another, what I would say, kind of issue with the climate control system is it is not great at defrosting. So on very humid days, especially if it is a cold but humid day, which if you live in North Carolina, there's some days in our winter where it's kind of humid, but it's also kind of cold. So you want heat, but then you need to turn on the air conditioner because you need to dry out the air because the windows were going to be fogging up. Since it's a heat pump, it can only make hot or cold air. It can't make both hot and cold air at the same time. So to dry out the air, it has to blow out some cold air to bring the temperature down on the coils. So a water condensation builds up on the coils and it gets out of the air, so the air is now dry. But then it's got to produce heat to still keep the car's internal cabin temperature warm. And you can tell because it'll start blowing out cold air, then warm air, and it tries to keep the warm air on as long as possible. And then at some point it has to get back to being a little cold again just to reduce the humidity. And that is weird because you'll be driving along in the wintertime going, why is the car blowing cold air whenever I have the heat on? I could have the heat on full blast and it'll still blow out some cold air when it's really humid. But that's just because it's trying to keep the air from getting too humid so it doesn't fog up the windows. So I like that it prioritizes not having the window fogged up because obviously you can't drive if your windows are all fogged up. But no one wants cold air blowing out of their vents in the wintertime. That is one of those things you just kind of have to live with this car. It is a little annoying, but it's not a deal breaker in my opinion because it's not like it's blowing out ice cold air. It's just less warm than what you would want it to be, but it doesn't last for a very long time. You know, it might only just blow cold air out for like a minute or two, and then it goes to blowing perfectly warm air once it's dried out the air a bit. But it only does that if it's very humid. If it's raining, you'll be fine. It has to be a very humid but cold day, and generally those two things do not go hand in hand, so you really don't have to worry about that issue. If you're like, oh, but I live in a cold climate, you know, that's going to be terrible because I won't have any heat. No, you will. There's just going to be probably 1 or 2 days out of the year where you notice, it's not really making really hot air because it's so humid outside. That's trying to balance the humidity levels with making hot air as well. Hopefully that all makes sense because I don't even know if I explained that very well. The sunroof works perfectly fine, though I wish it didn't have one. I like that there is a switch where you can turn on all of the interior lights, which I'll probably just leave on to help with the lighting of this video since it is starting to get dark outside. The LEDs are 5000K LED lights. They're not super yellow, which I like. I like a nice white bright car. It's got the controls for the sunroof, a nice sunglass holder. You got your buttons on the mirror, which I haven't ever messed with or programmed to do anything. The mirror does auto dim. The auto dimming works very well, so I'm happy about that. And nothing in this car really blinds you. In the summertime, you know, you don't see a really bad dash reflection in the windshield, which is great. The vents can point air pretty much exactly where you want them to go. Some cars, you know, you adjust the vents and you really don't even feel like the vent is doing much. The paddles feel good. They're in a good position. The buttons feel good. Everything works as you would expect, apart from the button to skip your music, because I would think that I would push this up to skip forward and I would push this down to skip back. And it's the exact opposite. If I want to move forward one track, I push this down and it skips me forward. If I want to skip to the beginning of the song or to the previous song, then I push it up. That seems so backwards in my head, and all the time I will want to skip a song and I pop it up and then I just skip back to the beginning of the song. And I'm like, great, now I gotta hit it down. It's confusing, it's annoying. I don't really like it. But for whatever reason, that's the way it's programmed. I don't know if that is just my car or if that's all of them. If your Kona does not do that, if you push it forward to skip forward or push it up to skip forward, let me know in the comments, because I really wonder if possibly my button is just programmed backwards for some reason. The gauge cluster gets plenty bright enough in the daytime, and it gets plenty dim enough at night for what you would need it. I mean, it gets almost so dim. The phone's actually picking it up pretty well because it looks way dimmer than that in real life. Generally, I keep it at about 15. It's bright enough to be easy to see, especially if you get under some bright street lights, but it's not so bright that it's blinding you at night. The screen dims. You can actually reduce the amount of blue on it. There's like a yellowish filter that you can turn on, which is cool because, you know, they say that blue light at night can kind of stress out your eyes, but then they give you blue lights everywhere else. So I don't exactly know why they were thinking about making this screen have a night mode feature, and yet every other light in here is blue. That doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. I'm glad that they at least add that feature. Now, I have been sitting here with the car running for 37 minutes now. It's 46 degrees outside. The heat is on because, well, I'm in shorts. And we've driven 57 miles since the car's been fully charged, with an estimated 159 miles of range left, 3.5 miles per kilowatt so far. So that's really not that bad. I'm pretty happy with that. And 85% has been used towards the climate. That's pretty understandable. And this is very interesting. Battery care has used 10 kilowatts. Oh, it's using 10.2 kilowatts. That is interesting because I have owned this car for a year now, and I've never, ever once seen battery care use any power. This is the first time in my life I've ever seen this car turn on battery care. It is not super cold outside right now, but keep in mind that this car has been sitting in our driveway, not getting driven for the past few days. And the past few days, it was consistently below freezing. So the battery on this car is probably 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe even colder than that. And now battery care is kicked on. I've driven this car plenty of times below freezing. Battery care never had to kick on to heat up the battery. This is the first time it has ever done that. And to me, that is very, very interesting. What is surprising is just how much energy it's using. It is using 10.2 kilowatts. That's a decent amount. But it doesn't even show it on the bar here. We can see that, you know, the pink goes to electronics, and then climate has used the most because I haven't been driving the car. So, well, I parked it up in the driveway a bit, so I used 1% for the drivetrain. It is interesting how it's not graphing out the battery care. It's telling me that it's pulling power, but has not even graphed it out. And it's also interesting that the climate is actually not showing that it's using any power, despite the fact that the climate control is running. That is very interesting. I've never seen this happen before. So that is I guess just a little programming issue, that it is using the battery care system to heat up the battery, but yet it doesn't actually show me what the climate control is using. That is incredibly weird. I have never once seen that happen before. What I do like is that with a screen open, you can pop out this little side display here, and you can just have different things on here, which is nice. If you're using Android Auto, that'll appear here on this screen, and you can still see your battery and climate control and stuff like that. So that is pretty handy. I keep on wanting to go in and out of this thing to see if maybe it'll update with something, but I mean, it's updating this number, what appears to be live, and yet we're clearly using power for the climate, and it's just not giving us that estimate. But it is showing that some of it's going to battery care. So that's interesting. Generally, the climate control runs at about 1 to 2 kilowatts, sometimes 3 to 4 if it's super cold outside. But I have noticed that if you turn on the defroster and let's say the air conditioner is turned off, because if I turn it to defrost, it automatically turns the air conditioner on. So you have to manually turn it off every time if it's not humid and you don't need the air conditioner. And if it is on defrost and coming down to the floor, then it'll blow hotter air than if it is coming out of these vents or the floor vents. It seems to prioritize heating up the air whenever it is in defrost mode. So that is very interesting, because you would think that it just all be the same. When you turn the air to 82, it'd be blowing out as hot air as it can, but no, actually it only blows out the hottest air it can make when it is on defrost mode, which is interesting. But it's nice that this car, even in below freezing temperatures, can create very, very hot air instantly. There's no waiting on an engine to heat up. It's just hitting a button that says heat, and 2 minutes later your car is nice and warm, which is, in my opinion, absolutely awesome. Now let's look at, see here, let's look at our history. There we go. I really want to show you the efficiency numbers we are getting in the winter time. It has been very, very cold this month. Most days are near freezing temperatures. Pretty much every single night we're getting below freezing. And like I said, for the past couple of days, we have consistently been below freezing temperatures. So our fuel economy is pretty bad. Well, I say fuel economy, it's our energy economy. It's pretty bad in the winter time, but it's not that bad compared to a lot of EVs on the market. I mean, you can see here, 47 miles were driven at 3.4 miles per kilowatt. That's pretty good. 52 miles at 4 miles per kilowatt. That's very good for winter driving. Now, for some of these short trips, the miles per kilowatt seems pretty bad. And that is because the heater is working so hard, bringing that cabin temperature up, as opposed to these longer trips. Once the cabin temperature is brought up to whatever temperature you desire, it doesn't have to work that hard to maintain the cabin temperature. So that is pretty interesting. You can see it puts a star on the day where you got the best efficiency, which in this case is 4.2. In the summertime, especially when the weather's really nice, we can see 5 miles per kilowatt in terms of efficiency. You can see that was 99 miles driven on the 13th. I'm not sure what I was doing that day, but I definitely drove a lot. 111 miles on the 8th, 3.4, 3.7. Yeah, only the short trips is it showing a 2 point something. Now, on the January 5th there, you see drove 15 miles and 2.7. So that was some pretty bad efficiency for that day. That must have been one of those really cold days. But all the decent length trips that we have taken this car on, you know, this 44, 35 miles, we're getting good efficiency. You know, and most of these trips where we're driving a lot, that's all on the highway. So those are highway range efficiency numbers, not, you know, economy driving. 2 miles, 1.9 miles per kilowatt. That would just be going down to the food line and back. You know, very short trip, blasting the heat because it's super cold outside. So not super great efficiency in just those 2 miles of it being driven. But that being said, it's so cheap to charge this car on level 2 that it's just, it almost doesn't matter how efficient it is. Obviously, it gets you better range. And then it tells you your carbon dioxide reduction, which who gives a shit about that, if I'm being honest. Because I bought an EV because I want to save money. I didn't buy an EV because I just want to save the environment. I don't even know if these cars are really doing the environment any favor, considering the amount of emissions that are produced to create the batteries. But some studies say that they actually do the environment a good favor and that they're a lot better than gas cars. I know I don't smell exhaust. I don't deal with exhaust leaks. I don't deal with engine maintenance. So to me, it is absolutely worth it to drive an EV, especially in 2025. The charging infrastructure has gotten a lot better. It's not exactly where it needs to be yet. We still need more level 3 chargers, but you can pretty much go anywhere in the country with an electric car. There's really just no reason to not buy one right now. And these Konas are selling for about $15,000 to $20,000. And you can find ultimate trim levels. That's going to give you your heated seats, your heated steering wheel, all sorts of driver assistance feature. This vehicle can basically drive itself on the highway as long as you jiggle the steering wheel just a bit, just to keep it, the lane keep assist, to keep that turned on. Now, one thing that I really like is that it gives you an analog speedometer. For me, I do not like digital speedometers. I like analog speedometers. And this car shows that it can do 120 miles an hour on the speedometer. In real life, it can only do 105 miles an hour. It is electronically governed to go no faster than 105 miles an hour. Unfortunately, the speedometer goes up to 120. So I have about 15 miles per hour listed on my speedometer that is never used. And I wish that car manufacturers would just put a speedometer that shows you how fast that car can go. If it's electronically governed to go no faster than 105 miles an hour, make the speedometer go up to like 105, 110, and that's it. You can increase the spacing between the tick marks in the speedometer, and that's just going to help you see it better. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, why not you just use a digital speedometer, which if I hit the button on the steering wheel to scroll through my menu, I have one. I just prefer the analog speedometer. Now, we had 14,000 miles on this car when we bought it. We now have 27,000 miles on it. So we've driven it a decent bit this year. It's got a little energy flow screen, so it shows you an arrow when energy is getting pulled away from the battery or put back into the battery, which is so useless. I do not know why they would have done that. The driving style is very interesting. You can see economical, normal, and aggressive. And I like how it gives you a percentage. So far, it's a pretty accurate reading. You know, if you floor it or you're driving really fast, it'll label that as aggressive. So if you're doing 90 miles an hour on a highway trip, it's going to say about 100% of your driving is aggressive. There's a certain speed that once you go over that, it labels that as aggressive driving. But for the most part, this car is just used, you know, to drive local trips. We've road tripped this car a few times. It does fine on a road trip. It's not the fastest charging car out there, and it doesn't have the best range out there, but it does reasonably fine. This car kind of does its own thing when it comes to charging the 12-volt battery. We did have an issue where it let the 12-volt battery die, and the DC to DC inverter would only power on when the vehicle was on, and it would not keep the 12-volt battery from dying when the vehicle is turned off. Took it to the Hyundai dealership. They looked at the DC to DC inverter. They ran some tests on it. They couldn't replicate the issue. They said they didn't know what the problem was, so then they sent it back. And then all of a sudden I noticed it worked after that. So I don't really know what or how that issue occurred and then how it went away, but it just somehow went away. They did replace the battery because when the 12-volt battery died, it kind of hurt the battery so much that it had to get replaced. And thankfully that was all done under warranty. This car has a 5-year warranty, which is now going to come out of warranty because it is 2025 and this is a 2020 model. So it's now an out of warranty EV, but the powertrain warranty is for 10 years. So the battery and the motor, that's warranted for 10 years. And I actually paid for a warranty where it's warranted from the date of purchase. So I purchased this car in 2024, which means in 2034, my powertrain warranty will finally go out. So if you can buy these as a certified pre-owned and you pay for a powertrain warranty, you do not have to worry about that battery pack or the motor going out for 10 years because it'll get replaced for free. And that, in my opinion, really does make this worth it. Now, something that I do wish this car had was a drive mode button on the steering wheel. We got this mode button, which if that was a drive mode button, that would be perfect. But instead you click the mode button and it turns on the radio. Now you can program that button to do other things, but you can't program it to change your drive modes. Right now I just have it to where it turns on media, and I actually try to make it to where it turn on Bluetooth media, but for whatever reason it wants to go to the radio station instead. So I never use that button. It's absolutely useless, and if I want to change my drive mode on the fly, I gotta find which button it is down here, which you can't even read them very easily because of, well, it's dim blue light. It is hard to see what these buttons are. But it's right here. I've just kind of remembered now, but I really wish that drive mode button was on the steering wheel. This button here to turn on the radio, or just as a programmable button, it's really not useful. I don't really like it. And then you got your push this button. You can talk via. Yes, if you use an iPhone, it would be Siri, but if you're a normal person, you just use an Android, then it'd be the Google Assistant or whatever AI bot you have installed on your phone to be your assistant. You can adjust how closely you follow a car with the adaptive cruise control, and the adaptive cruise control works really well. The anti-collision system works really well. I've only had, I think, 1 or 2 times in the entire year we've owned this car where it did any phantom braking. There was one time in particular where it slammed on the brakes for no reason. I was by myself on the highway. No one was in front of us. No one was behind us. It just locked up the brakes for no reason. And it was probably around 10 o'clock in the morning. So, and on a sunny day. So I don't really know what it saw. Maybe a bug hit one of the sensors up in here. I absolutely no idea. But other than that, I really don't remember it doing any phantom braking. So that's pretty good, because obviously you don't want the brakes to be engaged when you really don't want them to be engaged, like if someone is, following too closely behind you. Other than pretty much all I've just listed, I know this video's kind of gone on for a little bit now, and if you've stuck to the end, and you're really wondering, hey, should I buy this car in 2025? Yeah, I think you should. It's been a great car. It's cheap to drive. The maintenance has been, I had a little battery issue that has come and gone. The sensor that tells you how full your battery coolant is, kind of whether or not you need to refill it or not. For whatever reason, even though the battery coolant on this vehicle is at the fill line, it says it's full, that sensor tripped and the service light came on. We took it to Hyundai and they flushed out the coolant system and said that it's a problem that affects a lot of these Hyundais, and for whatever reason, all they got to do is do a coolant flush and then it goes away. So that's what they did. Sure enough, it went away and it has not been back since. So, apart from a sensor issue and a 12-volt battery issue, we've had 0 problems with this car, minus the Android Auto system not wanting to work sometimes. But that is a issue that a lot of auto manufacturers are having right now, not just Hyundai. And unfortunately, it's still an issue. You'd think they'd fix it, but oh well. Now, one thing that I really do like is it gives you a power and a charge gauge there. I guess we'll call it a gauge. So you can see how much power the vehicle is using, and you can also see how much power you're putting back into the battery when you're driving. That's nice. I like to see that. But what I really don't care to see is the battery percentage represented by 20 individual bars. Could they not have just put a number there? They got numbers everywhere else on this gauge cluster. Just tell me the battery percentage by a number. Why do I have to look at the menu just to see my battery percentage? I do not understand why they thought that was a good idea. To me, that's just a weird gimmick. I never look at that to see how much power I have in the vehicle. I want to know my battery percentage. Just put the battery percentage right there. And I would like to know the battery temperature. I think that would actually be a pretty nice thing to know. Interesting. It's still saying 0% or 0 kilowatts per hour on that. I think I've pretty much covered about everything I can with the interior of this car, except for down here. So you can see that it's got a USB port, but only one. which have the dash cam plugged into there. So if you come over to this side, you can see that cord is routed all the way up through here. It goes up underneath this. I just have little 3M adhesives that are holding that wire. Unfortunately, they do not stick onto the plastic very well, but they stick on well enough. And then it goes up through the corner. It pops out right here, and then it goes up along the side of the glass all the way to the camera. I love having a dash cam. I think everyone should have one. However, it's taking up my USB port. So I can charge my phone here, but if my wife needed to charge her phone, well, she can't plug in down there because that's where the dash cam is. So that's where this little splitter that we bought off Amazon comes into play. We got Type C, Type A. This is where the little refrigerator is plugged into. So now she can charge her phone. It's just annoying that you have to buy a splitter because it only gives you one port, but look at all the space here. I mean, they could have just had 3 individual ports. They could have had double stack USB. They could have had USB with a USB-C. And I don't know why they decided to put one USB, one 12 volt, and then you have USB here for your Android Auto, and that's it. Really wish there were more USB ports in this car. Really just at least 2 USB-C ports for just charging, or a USB-C port for the Android Auto. In 2020, USB-C obviously was a thing, but it's not like manufacturers are jumping on putting Type-C ports in a lot of cars, so a lot of cars just have regular Type-A ports in them, but I really wish that this car had Type-C ports in them because I'd like to be able to switch to just Type-C cables, but so much stuff is still using USB-A now, so it's like now we have to have 2 different types of USB cables, our USB-C cables and now USB-A cables, so it's the transition to USB-C has not been super smooth thus far, but that's, again, a small complaint I have. Nothing very major. The start-stop button, good placement, easy to hit. Wiper controls, they work perfectly fine. The auto sensing wipers, they work great. They don't over-wipe, and you can adjust how aggressive they wipe by simply just flipping this up and down. The light controls here. Right now I got the park lights turned on. I do like that there's the auto light features. The headlights are super bright, and the high beams, well, I hit it and it just goes right to auto. Let me hit it again. Now I got high beams. The high beams are not tremendously high. So yeah, they're high enough to where it's very easy to see down the road, and they're really bright. I mean, you can look along the side of the house and just see just how bright these lights are. And that is with my really bright lights I have on this house. But I do wish that the high beam light actually went up further. The low beams are angled a little bit high. I know it really doesn't look like that, but that's just because there's trees down there. But I do get a lot of people flashing their high beams at me whenever my low beams are on, because they think that my high beams are on. And that is something I've noticed with not only Hyundais, but Kias as well, is that their low beams are angled pretty high. But I do like the auto high beam feature. I wish that it was automatically turned on when the lights are in auto, but for whatever reason, nope, it does not automatically turn on. And then once you turn it on, like if I push it forward, it turns the high beams on. Now the high beams are off and it's back into auto. If I pull it back, it just flashes the high beams. There's no way to turn it off unless I completely turn off the lights and then turn them back to auto. Now auto high beam is turned off. So it's like you can't really turn off auto high beams, but they don't automatically turn on. I don't understand that. I really wish the auto high beam was just turned on by default. And if you wanted auto high beam specifically turned off, then you could just move this to your low beams and keep it that way. So yeah, it's a little bit odd, but oh well. Let's go ahead and turn off the car. And you can see that the backlight's still on. Now if I open the door, It tells you that you got your phone. Well, hold on a second. Let's click out of that. Oh, I can't click out of that. The car's powered off. Well, you saw it there earlier. It tells you that you have your phone still in the charger, which I really like because there's been a couple of times where I've seen that and that'll save me from leaving my phone in here. So that's a pretty nice feature. Alrighty, well now that we're outside of the car, I want to show you something that kind of irritates me, alright? So, you get out of your car, you go to plug it in. The charge port is locked. No biggie, I just have to hit unlock. And now I can open it. And it lights up. It shows 3 bars for the battery status, which I don't understand why, because what is that? 1 bar is for 0 to 33%, and then 33 to 66%, and 66 to 99%. That is just weird. Why was it not just 4 bars? You know, most battery-powered devices that don't tell you a battery percentage, they show you 4 bars, and they decided to have 3 bars. You can see how the lights flashed. The key fob is not in my hand. This car automatically locks itself, which means that if I go to open the charge port, well, in this case, I already had it open when it locked, so it's still unlocked, which is nice. But when the vehicle locks itself, it automatically locks the charge port to keep you from opening it. Now, if I hit lock on the key fob, I don't know if you heard that click, but that was the lock on the charge port door. So now I cannot open the charge port, which I kind of find that pretty annoying. I really wish that the charge port door was not locked, because I don't see a reason why it needs to be locked closed. I mean, what is going to happen to my charge port where it needs to be locked? Is someone going to open it up and steal the charge port from the car? Which, I mean, maybe, who knows, but I seriously doubt that's the case. It does have cornering lights, which is really nice. So you got your turn signal module, your daytime running light, and your actual high beam and low beam is in that round housing there. And then this here is a cornering light. So whenever you go to turn, it shines light on the side of the road, which is super great. I think that should be on every single car. That is, in my opinion, a fantastic feature. I think every single car needs to have cornering lights. It needs to be mandatory, just like backup cameras. Backup cameras are mandatory on all new cars now. Cornering lights should be too. It makes driving a lot safer, especially at night. One thing I really do hate about the front of the car, though, is the fake grille. This just catches bugs. That's all it does, is it eats bugs. Right now, it does not look so bad because it's wintertime and, well, it's cold outside. There's not a lot of bugs. But in the summertime, the front of this car is just covered in bugs. Because the aerodynamics of it are so good, it doesn't really push insects and stuff off the front of the car. And instead, they just, it eats bugs. You would think that my van would be the vehicle to eat bugs because it's shaped like a brick, but nope. This thing kills so many insects in this world, which, hey, I think is great. We don't need mosquitoes anyway. So far, if you've stuck with me to the end of the video, you probably know that, yeah, I got some complaints about this car, but I love the car. It's a good car. It's a little bit short. It's a little bit small, but that makes it easy to park. It's fun to drive. It's front-wheel drive. I'm not a fan of front-wheel drive cars, but for the price, I paid about $25,000 for this car. It was, and still basically is, in brand new condition. Realistically speaking, I'll see about 200 miles of range on the highway, and about 250 with mixed around town and highway driving. So Hyundai's estimate of 258 miles of range, according to the EPA, seems to be very accurate. I mean, I've gotten 235 miles traveled from a full battery down to 18%. So if I would have driven it from 18 to 0, yeah, I probably could have done 250 miles. So it can actually get its advertised range, But realistically, you will fall short of that, which is to be expected with an electric vehicle. And it's not an issue because there's level 3 charging in a lot of places now. And I don't drive 200 miles every single day. I mean, it takes us a few days before we reach 200 miles. So it only gets plugged in every so often. And I like the battery being able to charge to 100% because for me, I'd like the peace of mind knowing that I can drive 200 miles or however far I need to drive at a moment's notice. So I know it's not really healthy to leave your EV plugged in and charging up to 100% all the time, but it's convenient for me, and I got a 10-year warranty on the battery. So it's not like I'm really worried about the battery pack. And frankly, people have not been having issues with battery packs failing in these cars. There was the recall that affected both the Chevy Bolt and the Kona Electric because they do use the LG battery pack. And yes, a lot of these did have to get new batteries put in them. This particular vehicle wasn't affected by that. And if you do have a vehicle or looking to buy a vehicle and it does still have the recall on it for the battery, you're just going to get a brand new battery for free from Hyundai. So you really don't have to worry about, oh, what if the car has a recall? Well, then you're going to get a brand new battery. So unfortunately, that means you'll have to wait on Hyundai to install the battery, which, you know, if there's a back order, that could take a little while, but it's not really a huge issue in my opinion anymore because a lot of the affected cars have already gotten new battery packs put in them. And to my knowledge, LG has fixed the issue. So it looks like we don't really even have to be worrying about that happening in the future. Well, I know that this video was probably not the most entertaining video out there, but hopefully it was informative. Hopefully it gave you some more insight on this car. I talked about some of the things that bother me about this car in this video, which a lot of those are just very minor. But as far as talking about the good things about this car, pretty much anything that doesn't bother is either acceptable or good. Headlights bright, acceleration is quick enough. Traction control system works perfectly fine. Noise levels, it's not the quietest EV in the world, but it's a lot quieter than a lot of other vehicles on the road, that's for sure. Comfort wise, it's comfortable. I don't like the headrests though. I like the headrests that are on the back seats to be put on the front seats. The headrest is pretty uncomfortable. It just pushes your head way too far forward. So man, at least I can put the back seat headrests on the front seats, which I really wish would be a thing that you could do with newer cars now. But now new cars are made to where the headrests actually don't even come out anymore. It's now considered a safety feature, and they don't want people messing around with the headrests, unfortunately. The interior colors look really nice. I like the gray and the blue. The wiper blades work perfectly fine. I do wish it was the same size wiper blade. I do not like it whenever you have a small blade and a large blade. I think they should be both the same size, so that way when I go to the store to buy wiper blades, I just have to remember one number, you know, is it 18-inch blades, 17-inch blades, 20-inch blades, instead of, well, is that a 24-inch and that's a 17 or a 16-inch blade, or is that a 20-inch blade? Now I got to figure all that out. It's just annoying. I know with that van, I put 19-inch wiper blades on it. Both driver's side and passenger side, it takes the exact same size. And it's easy to remember. So whenever I go to AutoZone to buy wiper blades, I just walk in there, grab two 19-inch blades, pop them on, and I'm good. This does have a J-hook, which is really great. I despise whenever auto manufacturers use anything other than a J-hook for the wiper blades because they're just a pain in the ass to change. J-hooks are very easy to change, so I love the fact that Hyundai uses J-hooks, and you can lift up the blade. The hood doesn't get in the way. You don't have to put the wipers into any service mode. You just pop up the blade, and you can change it out. And you can really tell, especially by looking out the window, look how much dirt is on the glass. This car has not been washed in several months, and yet the paint doesn't seem to hold on to a lot of dirt, which is really nice. I don't exactly know how that exactly has happened because there's plenty of other cars out there especially white cars that show dirt very easily. And I don't know if Hyundai uses a particular kind of clear coat on this car. Maybe the previous owner waxed it really well. I have no idea, but I've noticed that the paint does not hold on to a lot of dirt very easily, which I do like. But it definitely does need a bath because it still is dirty. But in the wintertime, it's just too cold to get out here and wash the car by hand. That and the hose is frozen anyway, so it's not like I can use it. Well, if you have any questions about this car, like I said before, feel free to put it down in the comments. I'll probably make another video reviewing the way this car drives and handles in the future, perhaps. Really, I just wanted to talk about, is this a good car to buy? It's 5 years old now, but it's held up perfectly fine. There's been no maintenance cost at all. At 30,000 miles, I'm going to change the reduction gear oil. That needs to be changed according to the manual, if I remember correctly, every 30,000 miles. And that's a very simple and easy thing to do. It's something I could do myself. I just don't really want to. So I'm just going to take it to Hyundai, have them change that out. I have not had any issues with the tires wearing out prematurely. The tires have been set to 44 psi. I keep front and rear at 44 psi, and that seems to increase the handling because it's definitely a heavy car, so it needs a little bit higher pressure in the tires. And on top of that, since the tires themselves are pretty small, I mean, it's not like it's got very thick, chunky sidewalls, which means that I don't want the tire to actually collapse and for the rims to get damaged if I were to hit something really hard. So I like running higher pressure. It helps to prevent a blowout. It helps to protect the tire, decreases the wear and tear. And for those of you who are wondering, well, how will that impact traction? If you have too much pressure in the tire, then yes, it can affect traction negatively. But just running 5 to 10 psi over in most situations is more beneficial than running what the vehicle manufacturer recommends. Now, that's not true for every single car out there, though. It's a kind of a case-by-case basis. For example, the van, these tires are at 50 psi. Ford calls for 41 psi, but it's a lot better to run it at 50 psi. It reduces the tire wear. The sides of the tires will start to wear out prematurely if I keep it at 41 psi, and it handles a lot better with more firm tires, especially when you have a large amount of weight in the vehicle. Same story with this car. The sides of the tread will wear out if I keep it at the recommended pressure of, I want to say they recommended 39 psi, if I remember correctly. But like I said, I put them at 44 psi. I find that the handling is better, firms up the suspension a bit, and it decreases tire wear, and traction is still great. But the main reason I do it is, yes, it does help with the tire tread, but it really does help with the handling. Makes the vehicle handle a lot better. Makes the steering a lot sharper, and there's a little bit less body roll and just a lot more control in the corners with having that tire at a little bit of a higher pressure. I do not understand why they put blue drive and why a lot of manufacturers use the blue terminology for an electric or hybrid vehicle. On the back of the car, the word electric is displayed, so I don't exactly know why it's not displayed anywhere else on the car. There are plenty of people that don't want the world to know that they drive an electric vehicle, but I actually think it's pretty cool. I want people to see this thing and know, hey, that's an electric car. That's pretty cool, especially that it looks pretty much like a normal car. This looks almost identical to the gas Kona, minus the front end that has been redesigned. And there's no exhaust coming out the back of the car, so that's and the wheels are different, so there are some giveaways, but for the most part, people don't even know that this is electric until they hear it. And a lot of people, when I go through a parking lot, they're kind of staring at this thing because it has that fake electric noise that they pump out through a little speaker. A pedestrian warning system is what they call it. And people don't expect this thing to be electric because they think electric cars all look like Teslas. They don't realize that electric cars can look like regular cars. So if you're one of those people that you don't want the world to know you're driving an electric car, you know, the Kona is a great car because it looks just like a regular car. Mine is just a few little differences exterior wise from the gasoline car. There's no fuel door on this car. In the gasoline version, there is a fuel door on the C-pillar, so well, right below the C-pillar. This has a charge point door on the front, so it's interesting. Now, something that I do like that Hyundai has is the little yellow light that will appear right here to let you know that the car is charging its 12-volt battery. That light was on before. I don't think I had the opportunity to film it though, but I do like that Hyundai at least lets you know, hey, this car is taking care of that 12-volt battery for you, which is nice. But it's also a little bit weird because as long as the car starts up just fine, do I really need to know that when it is charging the 12-volt battery? It's odd why they would allow you to have that information by looking at a little yellow light at the front of the car to know that the 12-volt battery is being kept charged. Like, I don't know why I need to know that information, because it doesn't change the way I drive or use the vehicle at all. If it were to keep the 12-volt battery charged in the background without telling me by illuminating a yellow light on the front of it, I don't really see how that would affect anything. So I kind of feel like they have maybe wasted a little money going through the process of installing a little light to let you know that's charging the 12-volt battery. But maybe there was a reason behind why they did that. Maybe more than just letting people know, hey, the 12-volt battery is charging. It does not have a frunk. It just has a regular trunk. That is something that, and actually, now that I think about it, let me go ahead and unlock the car and open the trunk. You got a little door pocket there for a small umbrella if you wish to try to one hand that. Alrighty, so there's no struts to keep the hood open, so I'm just gonna have to kind of hold this here with my hand, but that's under the hood. There's no storage in here. The battery right here up front, it's not buried away under a seat, so it's very easy to change out the 12-volt battery, which is very good. You can see the date on this battery, 7/24. Like I said, this battery is a newer battery because the other battery, for whatever reason, decided to end its life. The coolant level, as you can see there, is perfectly fine. It's filled up, right below that max line. Apart from this having to get the coolant flushed, hasn't had any issues. Everything is relatively clean under here. There's no engine, there's no exhaust, there's no oil. Well, there's reduction gear fluid, which is an oil, but it's not like there is engine oil that has to be replaced. You can look at the top and you don't see any heat marks or anything under the hood at all. You got your EV sticker there, which is interesting because this vehicle, and it also uses a R1234YF refrigerant, which is very expensive refrigerant, but it's every single new vehicle now uses it, so there's really no going away from it, unfortunately. But yeah, there's some space in here. There are aftermarket engine covers that you can get with like a little storage compartment in them. It gives you about enough space to put a level 1 charging cable in, and that's about it. But there's really no reason why I'd want to go out and spend a couple $100s on those 3D printed cases to put in here, because I just don't really have anything to put under here that at least I'd really care about. Fuse boxes are right there. I like how accessible it is. I like how everything in here is very accessible. The wiper fluid, boom, right there, label. You got your brake fluid, your battery coolant. Everything is just easy to find. There's a lot of room in here, but there's not an engine under here, and this thing was designed for an engine to be under here. As you can see, there's that little rubber grommet there. That is where cabling could come from the under the dash into the engine bay, but there is no engine harness. That doesn't need to be used. So it's very interesting, and you can see where the motor mount would be. Well, they had to engineer a specific EV mount, which they even labeled EV, so that way they can actually mount, well, the electric motor. And you got the charge controller and the onboard inverter up under here too. You can see that goes to the charge point in the front. Believe it or not, has a nice latching sound when you close the hood, which a lot of cars, they kind of sound clunky when you close the hood, and this one has a really nice thud, a solid latch sound, which it was probably not an intentional design, but it's just kind of one of those things where it feels like it's good quality, which I liked. But what is interesting is when you're charging this car in level 2, it charges up to 32 amps, which is not super fast compared to a lot of other EVs that can charge at 40 amps, but it's also not a problem because this battery in this EV is relatively small compared to a lot of EVs on the market, simply because it's a smaller car. It doesn't need a bigger battery. It's got like a 64 kilowatt hour battery. And if I use my level 2 charger, which this is the charging setup, this charger can charge at 40 amps, and that's what it's set to. Let me see if I can get the phone to actually focus on the screen better with the, there we go. So you can see it tells you your voltage here. It's set to 40 amps, but it'll only charge to 32 amps. And I can plug it in just to show you guys. Let's see, unlock it. Now I can open it and take off the dust cover. By the way, do not cut these off. A lot of people are like, oh, why do you have dust covers? It's because the amount of grime that can get up in here, I mean, you can look up under here and you can see all the grime. You don't want that getting on these pins. You want those pins to stay protected. So keep the dust covers on, don't cut them off. Electrical connectors can build up. You can see it. It locked itself again. They can build up grime on them that can impede the energy flow from the charger to the car. So yeah, don't cut these off. They're here for a reason. They help keep water out, mainly dirt. Because you imagine if you get a piece of dirt, and I love how this can actually be held on there. You imagine if you get a little piece of dirt down in there, like how are you going to get that out? You'd have to probably get maybe a plastic straw or something and try to pop it out. That'd be difficult. Really like this charging setup here. We've got the NEMA 1450 and it's locked. This is an automotive grade NEMA 1450 outlet. This is not a dryer or oven plug. This is not a 30 amp outlet. This is a 50 amp automotive grade NEMA 1450, and it's going right to this $200 bought off Amazon level 2 charger, which is, it's a cheap charger, and it doesn't really give you an accurate readout in terms of your voltage and the total amount of current that has gone into the vehicle, but it works just fine. And I got this nice metal holder here. I don't know if you heard the car woke up for whatever reason. Oh, look at that. It just turned on the 12-volt battery charger. So what is interesting is that whenever that little light comes on, it actually lights up this yellow as well. So right now it's charging the 12-volt battery, which is interesting. But I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in. You can hear it locked. It turns green. For whatever reason, it's now not charging the 12-volt battery, or it probably is, it's just not telling me that. And we can see that it is at 31.9 amps, basically 32 amps, which is its max speed. It is not 55 degrees out here, it's about 30 something right now. But this does not at all tell you accurate temperature, because it's a cheap made in China EV charger. Why am I using it? I don't know. I have a really nice Shell charger I could be using, but I just figured might as well use the cheap one until it breaks. Haven't had any issues though. Cable doesn't get warm. The handle never gets warm. You can see it's working on that last 66 to 99%, because they put 4 bars there, and it is locked. So if you go to try to take it out, you actually can't. However, whenever you try to push this down, it automatically stops the current. So if it were to get ripped out, or if something were to go wrong, the locking mechanism failed, and you went to release this, it is going to automatically stop the current to protect itself, which is pretty nice. And on the inside of the car, it does tell you, well, I've waited a little too long now, the screen went away, but you can see that it does light up, but it actually does tell you your battery percentage. So let's unlock the car, open the door, and there you go. You can see that 7.4 kilowatts, says 2 hours and 55 minutes. I found that it always takes it less time than what it predicts. It always predicts way more time than it'll actually take. So more than likely this will be in probably 2 to 2 hours and 30 minutes. It'll be at 100%. It's not going to actually take it 2 hours and 50 minutes. It'll charge it faster than that. But for whatever reason, it wants to give you a very a much longer estimate than what it would otherwise be. Now I'm not going to let this charge up to 100% because it's at 76% battery. There's really no reason to have it charged to 100% simply because, you know, it's not healthy for the battery to always be at 100%. So there's no reason for us to keep it there. You know, I only charge the car really once it gets down to about 40 to 50%. I'll bring it back up to 100% and then just drive it around until it gets back to about 40 or 50. I have driven this car pretty low in the battery pack. I think the lowest we've ever been is 9% on this battery pack. And it gets about, you know, 1.5 miles per 1% of battery when you're down that low. Most of the time it gets basically 2 miles to 1%. So if you use 10% of the battery, you're gonna drive 20 miles. But what's up high up on the battery pack, it gets about 3 miles to 1%. So the way I average it out when I determine my range is I just look at my battery percentage. If it's at, let's say, 50%, I assume I have 100 miles of range. I just take whatever the battery percentage is and multiply it by 2. Now the car has not automatically locked yet, but I'm going to go ahead and just hit the button once. All right, so I find this pretty interesting. In today's car market, EVs are not selling super well, especially when they're used. They're still selling pretty well, at least here in America, but they're not above gas car sales. You know, EVs made up, I want to say, 6 to 8% of all new car sales for 2024. So it's still relatively small compared to the gas-powered market, but it's definitely a growing market, and it is growing a lot stronger. But just what I wanted to show you is the prices of Kona Electrics. So I'm on carsforsale.com. I have not filtered any of these search results by location. So you can see here, my search radius is any condition. We're just looking at all. There's no filters on the price or anything. I sorted by lowest price, okay? So this is an Ultimate, which is like my Kona, you know, that means all the bells and whistles. And this is in Cummings, Georgia, which is an interesting name for a city in Georgia. But anyway, it's got 120,000 miles on it. 12,000 bucks though. I mean, yes, it's got some miles on it, but for an electric vehicle, I mean, you can use an electric vehicle pretty significantly. The battery and the motor does not wear out as fast as people think. We can see this one has way less miles on it, and this is in is that New Jersey, I believe, and it's the same price, surprisingly. So that's very interesting. Just scroll down. 2021 SEL, $12,000, really high mileage though. For the year 2021, 45,000, 13, that's 47,000. Hopefully you get the point. 8,000 miles for $15,000. You know, looks like in New Jersey. So for $15,000, you can get a limited trim, which is the top of the line trim level. Top of the line trim level, 2019 model. It doesn't look wrecked. It's got the sunroof. Oh, it's got the nice blue and gray interior. All right, so the seat's got a little bit of wear and tear on it. Oh, it does not have the big screen, which is surprising. Maybe that was only the 2020s and newers that got that. But other than that, this particular one does not have cooled seats or the steering wheel heater or the parking assist, which is interesting because it says it's a limited trim. I don't think this is a limited trim. I think they have this listing wrong. This must be an SE trim, maybe an SEL trim. That is definitely not a limited trim. But still, $15,000 for a almost brand new car. It only has 8,000 miles on it. I mean, this is almost pretty much a brand new car that you're going to get for 15,000 miles, which is really, really surprising. Just the value that you will get for your money. So, yeah, I mean, look at 15,000 for these cars with, you know, somewhere around the 30,000 miles. You get hidden gems though. I really want to know why is this at this price for the low mileage? Let's scroll down to, there's the white top model. I love the ones with the white top, 2021. Now keep in mind, in 2023, they stopped with this body style. So for the 2024 body style, it's actually a newer car. It's longer, different interior. The dimensions are different. How you know it's a 2023 model, though, is if you look at the front of the car here. Let me pull up a picture of the front. Here we go. It's a good picture right there. There is none of the fake little mesh grills. It doesn't have that fake grill. It has a normal electric car front end, and they redesigned the headlights just a little bit different on the charge door. But other than that, everything's pretty much the same on the front end. Interior wise, they're also pretty much the same. This has the cloth interior instead of the leather. It has the big screen too. But you can, I mean, this is in that's where this this seller is located. I mean, this is on carsforsale.com. This thing's got 4,000 miles on it. It's listed for $17,000. So again, a pretty much brand new car. You know, it's January 2025 right now. So this car is just over a year old. Only has 4,000 miles on it, and it's on the market for $17,000. That is a steal. These Hyundai Konas are so affordable. Unfortunately, if you're trying to sell a Hyundai Kona, well, it's now really not a good time to sell them because look at the prices. These cars are going for dirt cheap. You know, people are not spending a huge amount of money on the Kona because it doesn't have the most range compared to other EVs out there. It doesn't charge the fastest. You know, it charges at 75 kilowatts per hour, which for its small battery means that you can still road trip this vehicle, but you're definitely going to sit there and charge longer than you would if you were in something like a Ioniq 5 or a Mustang Mach-E. You know, this is not going to be a quick stop, 10, 15 minutes, and you're back to 80%. You know, it may take 20 minutes to 25 minutes, depending on how low you went in the battery pack. Whenever I road trip this vehicle, I generally stop every 100 miles to charge, and I'm really there for only about 10, maybe 15 minutes. Really just depends on how aggressive I am on the highway. If I'm cruising it around, I found the sweet spot is under 70 miles an hour. That really keeps its efficiency as long as you're staying around 60, 65. Once you get to about 70 miles an hour or go faster than that, the efficiency does start to go down. But we can see we're getting into the 19,000, and look at the mileage. This car is more expensive and has more miles. So definitely the location of where this car is being sold and the condition of the car do seem to play a factor in how much the car goes for. But what I have found is that a lot of these cars are all for sale in New Jersey. And a lot are now being sold in North Carolina. So like several of these cars, if you've been looking at the locations on the listing, some of them are in North Carolina, obviously New Jersey and California and Colorado. But there's some other states that are selling them too. But This is just crazy to me how this is a 2021, that's a 2023. They're both listed for the exact same price, and yet the mileage on them is wildly different. They're 2 years apart. You know, I would much rather get a 2023 with very low mileage on it instead of spending the exact same amount of money for a 2021. Now, granted, this is the Ultimate trim and this is the SEL, but still, you know, that's in Florida, that's in Virginia. So, yeah, the location of where the car is being sold and who is selling it. Shop around a little bit. Just pay attention to the pricing in your area. And honestly, I would say it is totally worth it to go over to another state. I mean, that's a 2023 in black with the fancy wheels. It's an SEL. That's pretty nice, but we're already in the $20,000 for these cars. They've definitely increased their price the further we go into. And now again, I have this to sort from lowest price first. So the further we go, the more and more expensive. Oh, there's a 2024 Kona SEL for $23,000. That's actually a pretty good price right there. And that's only 7,000 miles. Now the 2024s, the vehicle, you know, it has a redesign. The car looks different. Still on a 400 volt battery architecture. It still charges and performs the same. Horsepower is the same. Acceleration is pretty much the same. The vehicle is, I want to say 6 or 8 inches longer. So there is more back seat room and more storage space in the back. The interior got a bit of a refresh, but you can really tell that the legroom increased by a little bit, which it really needed to increase. And obviously the redesigned headrests as well. The front end's been, you know, the dash has been redesigned a bit. The back pretty much looks the exact same. Steering wheel has been updated. The screens have been updated. You know, it looks more like an Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6. And they've definitely made some improvements. For example, Type-C charging cables. That's nice. I love it how they tell you the wattage, which, by the way, the Kona that I just reviewed, you know, my personal car also tells you the wattage on the door, which is really nice. So this is what looks to be a really nice car. And obviously you can look at this for yourself, you know, just look online and you can find good deals on Konas. These cars were all $24,000. Let's just go to page 8. $26,000. You know what, actually, I'm just going to sort from price highest. Let's look at the oh my goodness, there is no way that is right. $82,000 for a 2025 Kona Electric. They must have messed that up. There's no way anyone's going to pay that much money for it. That is just unbelievable. Okay, $45,000. That's a 2021 with 23,000 miles for $45,000. And you can get a 2021 with this same amount of mileage for about 15. So you definitely price around if you are looking at buying a Hyundai Kona. Definitely price around, because some of the people are trying to sell these things for way too much money. And you can see some of these cars are brand spanking new and they're not used, but other cars, like this car, is lightly used. It's a 2020 limited, $41,000, which is absolutely crazy, because I can go here and I've already shown you cars with similar year, similar mileage, or less mileage for a lot cheaper. So yeah, I would definitely look at getting a vehicle that is pretty cheap, because if you're wanting a Hyundai Kona, yeah, the mileage might be relatively high on some of these, but it's an electric car. It really shouldn't be affected by mileage as much as the gas car will. The electric powertrain, there's just less moving parts, you know. And yes, the batteries do wear out over time, but so far, the Hyundai batteries have been lasting for a long time. No one's had really any big issues with them, again, apart from the recall situation that happened with the first gen Konas, and that also affected the Chevy Bolts too. But I just want to share this with you. This is very interesting. When you look at buying a car and you look at the resale value of a vehicle, right now, could you sell a Kona? Sure you can, but you're not going to get a lot of money for it, because the market value for Konas has dropped significantly, which is a shame, because it's such a good car, but that means right now you need to buy these things, because once EVs become a lot more mainstream and more people are buying electric cars, used Kona prices will probably start to go back up again because there will be a demand for them. Right now, there's not a significant demand for Kona prices, but eventually there will be, at least in my opinion. I could be wrong about that. Obviously, I don't know the future, but I can definitely see that, the prices of electric vehicles now, they might not have great resale value, but they definitely will increase in value as time goes on, at least in my opinion. I'm gonna look up the Chevy Bolt, because the Kona and the Bolt kind of compare with each other as far as features, the size of the vehicle's range, its charging speed. They're very similar cars. Now, I would say the Hyundai Kona definitely outperforms the Bolt. It is the nicer car. It handles better. The interior is a lot nicer. And frankly, I don't exactly trust Chevy's reliability. But just to show you the comparison of the prices, so some of these are very high mileage cars. Others of these are not super high mileage. The Bolt is definitely the cheaper car to go with, but you're getting less than you would if you were to buy a Kona. As we go trying to find low mileage Bolts, let's sort by mileage lowest. Okay. Trying to compare some. All right, here we go. Here's a 2019 with 4,000 miles for 15,000. That's 5,000 for 27,000. So as you can see, with these similar mileaged Chevy Bolts, they're going for around the same price as the electric Konas are. But yet the electric Kona is a better car than the Chevy Bolt. It's a nicer car than the Chevy Bolt. So if you were trying to look at other EVs on the market to kind of find like a cheapest EV, if you're really trying to get a really affordable but decent car, I would recommend going with a Kona instead of something like a Chevy Bolt, because you're getting a better car and they pretty much cost the exact same amount of money. I mean, this is 10,000 miles, $18,000. It's pretty much the exact same amount of money. But you can also, for $8,000, pick up a pretty high mileage Bolt. And if you just needed a simple beater daily driver and you just needed it to be cheap and reliable, that is cheaper than the Konas. But like I said, you are getting less car for the money. And the Nissan Leaf, I would not even entertain getting that car. That is definitely, in my opinion, not a good electric car. But it is good for what it is, depending on what you want to use it for, but it is not in the same league as a Chevy Bolt or a Hyundai Kona. Now, some of you are probably going to be wondering, what is my power bill like? So what I decided to do was kept this envelope I got from my power company, and this is very interesting. So, like I said, we bought this EV in January of 2024. So here's December of 2024, and this is December of 2025. So you could see the yellow line here represents the average home energy use. The green line is an efficient home energy use, and then the blue line is my home. So my house, which keep in mind, everything in my house is electric. I do not have a gas dryer. I do not have a gas heater. I do not have a gas water heater. Everything is electric. I have a heat pump. So it's not like I have a gas bill. So whenever it's wintertime and it's cold, I use more electricity because I'm paying to heat the house. So what's interesting is I'm pretty much right on the money as far as the average house goes. And then we get the electric vehicle in January, and you can see there's January. And we definitely drove it a lot that first kind of month we had it. Well, really the first few months we had it, because it was a new car and we were taking it on trips and all excited to drive it. So we did spend a considerable amount more in electricity just because of how much we drove. And on top of that, it was also really cold in February. So our electricity usage went up. But then it kind of went back down, and it stayed pretty much consistently higher than the average home, but not by a crazy amount. We are probably using about 500 kilowatt hours more than we would normally use. And to price that out, let's see here. Let's pull up the calculator. Alrighty, let's look at 500 kilowatt hours times. If I charge during the discount period, it's 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Off peak is 9 cents, and then the on peak, or whenever the energy demand is high, it's 20 cents. It really does go up a lot in my area, and I'm on the flex savings plan, so we're gonna multiply this by 6 cents to see how much money that is. And oh, $30. Okay, so a whole month of driving cost $30. Let's say I don't even charge on the discount period. Let's say I charge on just off peak. I'm looking at, let's see, $45. So even if I charge on off peak, it went up from $30 to $45. So to charge the vehicle, it really doesn't cost a lot of money at all, and it is far cheaper than gas. Like, we are noticeably spending a lot less money now because I'm not spending any money in gasoline. So now, granted, I am paying off the vehicle, but I paid about $25,000. Well, it was technically $24,900, so I do qualify for the $4,000 tax credit. So take $4,000 off of it, and it's basically a $21,000 car that had 14,000 miles on it, and it is in like new condition. So in my opinion, it was a pretty good bargain. Right now, there's some Konas on the market for cheaper, so you can actually pick up some for even cheaper, as we have seen on carsforsale.com. And there's plenty of other websites you can go to as well and look at different prices of Konas. But this just gives you an idea of what the pricing is, and also how much energy we use. Really don't use a crazy amount of electricity. We did not have to upgrade the service panel in our house. We have a 200 amp service panel, and just put a 50 amp breaker in, ran some 4-gauge solid copper wire to the NEMA 1450 outlet, plugged a charger from Amazon in, and called it a day. The most expensive part, actually getting the level 2 charger installed, was just the wire. That actually cost more than the labor. The wire was $600. It's absolutely crazy just how expensive copper wire is. But all in all, it was about $1,100 to get the level 2 charger installed. So, yep, that money, that just kind of went out the window there to get that charger installed, but now it's on the house. So if we go to sell this house one day, that's kind of a selling point for the house, that it already has a EV charger pre-installed professionally by an electrician. So that hopefully will help increase the house's value, especially as EVs become more mainstream. We're gonna start to see more and more people needing EV charging installed on their house. So that is interesting. Well, if you have any questions about the Kona Electric, like I said, just leave them in the comments, and hopefully me or somebody else watching this video will be able to answer your question. And there's also some good Facebook groups there where you can go and look up information on the Kona Electric, and I would totally recommend buying a used one instead of a new one from a dealer, because let's face it, a new one is going to set you back. If we look at the price highest, brand new ones are going to set you back around $43,000 to about $40,000. Really, a lot of these are all at $43,000. And you can buy used low mileage Konas for so much cheaper than that. There's no reason to spend $41,000 on a car that has 15,000 miles whenever there are other cars with the same amount of mileage for far cheaper. And they're in great condition. So yeah, this is really a bargain, and I think a hidden gem in the car market that people just do not realize is out there. So hopefully this video made people, especially buyers, more aware that the Kona EV is a hidden gem in the car market right now. It's definitely worth buying, at least in my opinion.